Morning, everybody. Yes, I'm Liz from the Fox Business Network, and I'm wearing yoga pants because of the weather. So I'm just putting that out there right now. We are absolutely thrilled to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to quickly jump to the topic of what we are discussing, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating. You know, they talk about it being the next big thing, artificial intelligence, also known as AI. Well, it's not the next big thing. It's actually happening right now. All of you probably have had some type of, incorporation of it into your business, whether it's GPS or the security systems that have facial recognition, all kinds of things like e-commerce, autonomous driving. That's using artificial intelligence. This panel is entitled Women in Artificial Intelligence, Machine Learning and Business Dynamics. I get the second part, but the first part, women in artificial intelligence, is what we are going to be tackling here today. Where do women fit into what is an absolute tsunami of machine learning development now? Joining us here, and we are very excited to have these three brilliant women, Jenny Fleiss. Hi, Jenny, wave your hand.
Hello.
Jenny Fleiss is the co-founder of the famed startup that's kind of turned into can't go to a party without it, Rent the Runway, and she is now the CEO and co-founder of Jet Black. You guys have maybe heard of Jet. It's the online e-commerce opportunity at Walmart. Jet Black is the fashion part of that. It's wholly owned by Walmart. It's a personal shopping over text message operation. Shelley Zalis. Hi, Shell. She made it. Shelley Zalis is the co-founder of OTX Global Technology. She's consulting. She's the CEO and founder of the Female Quotient, the organization which supports and mentors women to find their voice, that's all of us here, and embrace their leadership powers and work together to transform corporate culture for women today and in the future. And then Tal Rubinstein. Tal came all the way from Israel. Let's give her a big hand for that. She's the co-founder of a company called Shupperz. It's a retail innovation startup, very cool, that involves a global network of shoppers that enable anybody out there to shop like a local, even if you're thousands of miles away. All right, Jenny, I'm going to begin with you. How are you, if at all, incorporating AI, artificial intelligence, into what you're doing right now?
Yeah, well, good morning. Thank you for having me here and for everyone getting through this weather. So I think first off, AI, I think, can be a very scary, daunting word. In fact, AI has existed for years. It's a fancier word to me for automation. I think that there's categories within AI that are the machine learning that do get more technical and more involved. But at Rent the Runway, examples of automation are abound in certain ways that we personalize the site, in certain filtering practices that we use, in certain ways that we might automate the date calculation of when we need you to send your item back by so we can get it to the next person. So I think this has actually been a part of our world, and I think what's happening now is it's really ramping up so that it can do more things. Jet Black is personal shopping over text message. Eventually, we would like it to be more voice-oriented as well, and I think people will shop with voice. And I think where automation comes into play there is to shop over voice, you need to be lightning fast back and forth because you can't really wait for someone to respond. So the really only way you can do it successfully is if you have AI, automation, and in-time machine learning as well to service a customer so that when you ask for something, the response is instantaneous. That's basically impossible with human. You need to automate.
Yeah, any of us who've ever been on the phone and you said, well, wow, they had the answer so quickly, a lot of that is sort of weaving humans with AI, and that brings me to Tal. How are you using AI in what you're doing at Shupperz?
Hi. Well, you mentioned I flew in from Israel yesterday, so I just have to say that I think, thank you, Wendy, for inviting us. I think this is the perfect
Hey, Wendy.
showcase to show, that, women, empowerment of women and innovation can, overcome conflict and everything that's going on in the world and political. So I'm really, really, really happy to be here, so thank you. So Shupperz is basically, we're social commerce, we're conversational commerce, we're connecting people and retailers from all over the world, and we're doing that by believing that AI and technology should really enhance us as people and not replace us. So basically, if I want to buy something, cross-border, what's more obvious than to talk to somebody who actually lives there and is a smart shopper and knows how to shop? So take that, and obviously we're applying machine learning and developing the algorithm, but we're saying, hey, but we're using an actual person on the other side, a person that has, human cognitive capabilities. So together with that, take AI that should complement our Shupperz, which are the local talented shoppers, and basically make them just better at what they're doing.
I think that's actually, it touches on a misconception, which is that AI doesn't have to be only automation or only bot, right? Like, I think, to me, in its best form, it is a combination of human and automation.
Yeah.
Yeah, an amalgam of the two, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Shelley, it's sort of like voice commerce right now, but you've seen trends come, you have seen them go. How do you see AI right now?
Thank you. I want to jump in for everyone here that doesn't know what AI is. So I just want to contextualize it for a minute because we're speaking about something very sophisticated and very new. It was a trend that is going to stick, and it is going to last for quite some time. So AI, artificial intelligence, and I'll try to bring this to just the lowest common denominator so we all understand it. Sometimes technology can be very scary, but it also can be quite simple. It's a really simple concept. It's all about automation. You put data in, and the more data you put in, the smarter the bot gets. But someone has to put data in. Data doesn't just get into a system by itself, which is why we need the human interaction of data to integrate. And today we're talking about women in tech and why it is so important to have women in tech. Men and women, masculine, feminine, we think differently. So if you have a certain logic putting the data in to make the bot smarter and smarter, if you have a masculine mindset, which is linear, analytic, decisive, directive, it's going to give different kinds of inputs than if you have a feminine mindset, which is more collaborative, contextual, visual, storytelling. You think about different data sets to put in because your mind works differently. And that is why it is so important as a trend to start not just having a few women in. We need to flood women into these fields today because it is really creating the future, the pathway and the journey to the future. And so trends. Voice automation, just like podcasts are becoming the new it. We used to have little videos. Now it's all about audio. So voice is becoming very relevant. We actually created an advice chatbot with over 900 videos. So if you go in and ask a question, how do I negotiate a raise? How do I find my voice? Work-life balance. It will pull different videos to inspire you and educate you with different pieces of advice from women in the workplace who have been there, done that. So AI is a very powerful tool because it learns you. So trend, personalization. Trend, customization. Trend, voice. Trend, easy to use is, I think, where we're going in this world.
Okay, let me dovetail from exactly what you just said and why it is important to get women into this new trend of machine learning and coding and putting in the algorithms, because the bias you just talked about, where if you have men doing the data input, it's going to reflect them. There is actually an example that I found where algorithms feed biases. They perpetuated, there were men putting in certain algorithms, intentionally or not. I'd like to believe they didn't do it intentionally, but it perpetuated the pay gap by shunting or targeting listings for higher paying jobs toward men. Now, it's not necessarily that there was something nefarious, Jenny. It's just that when you put in certain code words on resumes, they were code words that men would use in their resumes versus code words that women, women will say team and problem solving. Men might say, success and one, or, WON, or who knows what. But Jenny, how do you find the pool of available women in tech as you're working to hire for Jet Black?
So I think both at Rent the Runway and at Jet Black, I started those businesses out of insights that I, as a female consumer, had in my life, needs that I had in my life, and I think that's a powerful part of why female entrepreneurship makes sense. Women drive 80% or more of e-commerce purchase decisions, and so we are often best positioned to think of the problems and identify solutions and innovate for those solutions. I think as it relates to Jet Black and Rent the Runway, female engineering talent is sparse, but when you have a business and a mission that is really connected to the female, there is a greater likelihood that you will drive passion in people who either want to learn about that field, get involved, or apply to work at your company. I think we've also taken people who are at really early stages in their career and recruiting out of colleges, even talking at high schools, and so having ways to connect with women younger and taking a bet and a risk that someone is going to be hungry and helping them kind of on their journey in their career is very powerful.
I have the craziest story. No, you know what? You just flip the button on.
Oh, imagine that. I've
Smart.
been in television all this time.
I think this
didn't
works
know.
now. Okay, this is the craziest story, real life example. I was at the Cannes Lion Festival in Cannes, France. I was sitting at a table with maybe 10 people, men and women, and at a table next to me, this man turns around. He had a very distorted face, and there was another man opposite him that I couldn't see his face. He was surrounded by incredible, powerful women. So 2 men, incredibly powerful women. Then the other guy turns around and he has an equally distorted face. So I say to everyone at the table, let's play a game. Who can find out who those guys are? I'm dying to know what their story is. And I said, everyone pull out your phones and search. And don't tell the answer. And who came up with the answers first? The men. So I said, I'd love to know what everyone searched for. The women all searched for unattractive, brothers, because they looked very similar, media business, all kinds of things. The men that got it right, grotesque, went right for the words that really described their face. And that's how their search terms found the answers, but women were too kind, even in their own searching devices, which is part of human in, human out, and how you start making these decisions. As it turns out, they're very famous brothers in the movie industry that did too much Botox, and there's a disease. I don't remember what it was called, and their faces were so distorted, they actually were grotesque. But the men went right for the words that helped define and get the right answers. So that was a perfect example of words in, words out, and how you can define outcomes, interestingly enough.
Which is a perfect explanation of what goes on, at least depending on where you are, that certain men use different lexicon, use different vocabulary. But, Tal, it's interesting because in Israel, women and men serve in the military. It is absolutely required, and part of what you get when you work in the Israeli military and when you serve is an unbelievable exposure to technology and learning. So the military is spitting out a lot of people who know exactly what they're doing with AI. Is the pool bigger in your region of the world of women coders and people who can harness AI, because it is not the next best big thing, but the big thing right now?
So that's a really, really good question. I mean, Israel is known as like startup nation, but unfortunately, no. I mean, in my company, I have, I think, about 80% women over men, but none of them in the technology departments. And I think that comes because I think we need to ask the question a lot sooner. I love the fact that everybody, I'm guessing everybody knows the book Lean In, right? That made a huge impact on women in tech. And I think that for us here, if we're looking at that book, we've all leaned in, and I think we now need to make room. And if we make room for other women in the public mind, in our companies, for colleagues, celebrating their success, we'll see more women. And that way, women, in tech are exposed to young girls. I mean, my daughter's 8. She wants to be an entrepreneur. She has this little notebook where she writes inventions, but she's exposed to it. Mostly of them are for like Six Flags Mountain. I'm for like adventure parks right now, but she loves it because she's exposed to it at home. And if that is not something that we bring into the mind, to the public mind with priority, and even though we are exposed to it in the Army, most of the women go to study, marketing and other, more social, humanitarian subjects, which are very, very important, but they're not tech, sorry.
I think it's starting to happen more in school content. So my daughter is 6.5, and actually 2 of her after school classes, one is robotics, and the other is like Code Play, which is like learning to code via making like video games. And she loves it, right? And half of the classes are girls, and like I never had cooking, like maybe there was like sewing, I don't know. Like I think so. I think it is starting to happen at younger age of building the intrigue.
So I think that if we make room for that, you know, just like Wendy said, you know, from here and not just wait to go from top to bottom, that's a way we can really influence the next generation. And hopefully, you know, when my daughter becomes an entrepreneur of some, you know, adventure park, I don't know what she makes up, she'll have women to choose from.
But I think it starts at a very young age. Confidence starts at the age of 5. And part of the problem with technology and STEM or STEAM programs right now in high school, it's elective. And so who goes into elective programs? Boys, and girls are the minority, and they feel uncomfortable going into classrooms where they are the minority. And so I encourage young girls just to bring their girlfriends with them into the classroom to change the dynamics so that we stop having this conversation of girls and women having to wait for, you know, equality. Flip the balance and make it work so that you can get into STEM programs at earlier ages and rise up with confidence.
Part of AI and the attractiveness of it for a lot of businesses is that, quite frankly, it reduces cost. Yes, you need people to put in the data, but after that, it can start answering questions. So what does that mean? That's more of a customer service thing, which in certain traditional jobs, those have been for women. Are any of you guys worried that AI will basically kind of vaporize women from these traditional jobs? And how do we get them then to sort of, water's fungible, you move it out of one place, it'll go to another. How do we get them to then flow to the right and better paying jobs?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest challenges with AI is it is eliminating lower level jobs. And lower level jobs tend to be jobs that women hold.
Yes.
We start 50-50, we end at about 15-17%. We fall off in middle management. So those entry level jobs are starting to disappear with AI because they are data entry jobs. And so that is all going away, which is eliminating some of the female talent at entry level.
Jenny?
So the way I see it manifesting at Jet Black is we're actually able to provide a better service for consumers that I don't think would have been possible without AI or without humans. So I don't know that it's always an either or. I think there are instances where you can leverage AI to get a better end consumer instance, but it doesn't mean taking out the human. So if I imagine shopping over text message or shopping over a voice and the questions, the queries, the back and forth that you need to have, it's really hard to do that without some amount of human input and human eyes on the process. And I think that has meant that that sort of business hasn't existed in the past. So I think you're actually, like, you're creating new businesses, you're creating a new type of consumer experience versus necessarily taking away or replacing jobs. Like, I don't think it's always an either or. And so I think it's up to us as business leaders, entrepreneurs, to think of those opportunities where, like, you can do extra things. You can become a better solution for the consumer by leveraging, yes, AI, but that's incremental versus a substitute.
I can say that with Shupperz, we created this whole new profession called being a Shupper, and we've had a lot of moms, and we have a waiting list because basically they're getting paid to shop, which is the best job on earth.
Explain how it works to our audience here.
Okay, so what it is, it's like local talented shoppers that connect to cross-border online shoppers via a mobile app. Very, very easy. It's conversational commerce. They're chatting. And the Shupper just actually goes into the stores and buys things for that cross-border user as if they were actually there. So if I want to buy something amazing, you know, from Paris, I have a Shupper in Paris, goes down to, you know, the local pharmacy, tries on the cream for me, or I want to buy something from Sephora in New York. My Shupper is a makeup artist. She shows me exactly what it looks like. So by creating this profession, we had a lot of women who were not tech savvy, which said, hey, I have to be a Shupper. They came for the training, and now they're super tech savvy. I mean, we're taking them into the tech industry and allowing them to work at something they're really, really talented at, but also that is, you know, fit for the age that we're living in.
I'd also like to start seeing AI be called women's names. Watson, so everyone knows IBM Watson. Watson's a genius, and Watson beat a human on Jeopardy. My mother's an expert on Jeopardy. Probably couldn't beat my mother. But why didn't we call it Dorothy?
Well, wait a minute. Alexa, Siri, Cortana.
Exactly, but they're digital assistants.
That's true.
They're
Okay.
not geniuses.
They're not geniuses.
Just saying.
We
Let's
need
just
them to
call
be
it what it
digital
is.
geniuses. Hal, remember Hal, the computer? There you are. But that bias works both ways. So if you've got male coders inputting things, suddenly it's a female voice. I think the default on just about every car I've ever gotten, the GPS is a female voice with a British accent. I don't want somebody screaming and yelling at me in a Brooklyn accent or, Cleveland, but you want to remain calm. Women are cool under pressure. So I'll take the compliment, but I think your point is well made, that it is just a digital assistant. If Forbes had a stat, 85% of the machine learning workforce is male right now. So as you guys hire, do you actively try and recruit women, and how do you do that?
I think it comes into hiring the best person for the job, and I do think if you're a woman starting a business and it's a female-oriented business, often the people who are the most passionate and who most relate to the consumer problem and want to try to work and solve it are women. So I think that is like the healthiest, best way to make it happen versus ever forcing it, right? It's like given two equal candidates, great if you have two equal candidates, you want to hire a woman. I'm not going to hire someone who's not as competent or equipped just because of that.
Yeah, that ends up hurting women in many cases, but go ahead, Tal, what do you say?
I just said, I think we have to make an effort to have candidate women. Okay, so I'm going to take the best person for the job, but I insist in my company that if I'm recruiting, I have to see at least one female candidate to show, just to understand. So I know I can't get 50-50 because there aren't any, but I really drive hard our HR to give me those candidates. And I think that's where we need to make that effort, to find maybe female candidates that don't think they can make it because they're young moms and they have young children and they think that, the startup is not cut out for them because we work 300% of the time, all the time. So by insisting of them, I literally personally get on the phone and call them and say, come for an interview. They say, no, I don't think it's for me. I just gave birth. I'm like, come into an interview. See for yourself. We have a lot of women in my company. We have a lot of moms. See that it's possible. I have 2 young kids. Well, 3 if I'm counting Shupperz, my startup. But, and it's doable. So if we insist to have these women candidates, then we can choose the best candidate.
I think, though, you need to fill the pipeline with diversity, but it's not just recruiting, it's also your hiring managers. So one of the biggest problems is, recruiters get paid 2 for 1 to fill the pipeline with women. The pipeline's fat and happy, but if you have a hiring manager that is a white man, he's going to end up choosing the white man. So you need to have the hiring, the recruiting manager fill with diversity, but you also have the hiring manager have diversity. So if you have a diverse hiring team, you will be highly more likely to have diversity. And when you look at diversity, diversity is good for business. We all understand that. When companies have more women and diversity, they perform over 34% better. So there's all these statistics that are truth. You don't make this stuff up. And so it's also having that in mind, that if you truly want to deliver better business results, having diversity in your organization is very good for business.
I just want to say, we have a lot of young women in this audience, and I'm probably one of the older people in here, and I just think it's really important, because when you give a man a job that he's never done before and it's a promotion, men's inclination is to say, yeah, I'm there, yeah, I totally deserve this, yay, I deserve it. Women tend to say, wait a minute, I've never done this before, I don't want to disappoint anyone, I don't want to mess up, I don't want to make the mistakes. I need everybody in here to simply say, fake it till you make it, okay? Because our great president, Teddy Roosevelt, once said, when somebody asks you to do something you don't know how to do, say, sure I can, and then start learning how the hell to do it, because that's what men do. And as we go forward in the great, well-paying jobs, it's going to be tech, isn't it?
I think you definitely need that mentality. You need like the dream big mentality is how I talk about it a lot. And that was when you go and pitch a venture capitalist in particular with a startup concept, they're looking for the multi-billion-dollar ideas. Like that is how their business structures are all built and made. And so unless you are pitching with like a huge vision in mind, which women are less inclined to do because they want to hit their numbers, they're more conservatively inclined, then like you're not going to get the investment dollars. So we started the Rent the Runway Foundation very much focused on how do we encourage women to like take that leap and think 10 years out, how big could this be? It strikes me that for machine learning, that is it's a really big, hard problem. And so I think you need to kind of have the confidence in yourself to think you can tackle something that like might take 5 to 10 years, right? Like these are long-term problems.
Shelley's the expert on including women. It's amazing what you have done on so many levels and the generosity that you have in saying, no, open the door and include, just like what Tal was saying. What do you hope to see? And what was your biggest challenge as you started as a younger woman?
I never thought about it as a challenge, and I'm sure if I go back now 36 years when I started in the workplace, so I'm with you up there when you talk, we might be the two oldest people in the room, but I probably am owed a lot of money. If I was paid 30% less than all the men, I'm sure I'm owed a big paycheck. I never thought about that. We never questioned it. We weren't taught to think. I never thought that I would be doing the same job for less money. Really never crossed my mind. But what I did know was I thought differently than all my male bosses. My male bosses were very linear, and if I would have followed their advice, my first review, I thought I was going to get a big raise, and I did all the right things, and I got a horrible review on a typewritten piece of paper that we use typewriters, 10 pages long, where it was all the generic nice things about me, but then it was I push people too hard, I make them think out of the box, I develop too many relationships, I should be in the office more, I should be a order taker, and I remember looking at my boss thinking, I have two options, agree and say you're right, or just makes sense to me and say, you're just so wrong, and one day you're going to regret this decision because I quit. And it was the best decision. I ended up hiring him later and firing him because he was terrible at relationships. So I let him go. But I knew that I thought very differently, and I wasn't going to wait for the right time. I was going to make it the right time. The right time is when you choose to make it the right time. Yeah. And I led with empathy and with vision and collaboration, and I took the next steps even though they were scary. And so I knew I always thought differently until Sarah Jessica Parker said, trying to be a man is a waste of a woman. And I was like, yes, own your strength, don't conform, don't follow everyone else, and be yourself. And that worked quite well for me.
Jenny, your best advice to people in the room?
No doesn't mean no, it means not right now. You need fortitude, you need to kind of keep asking, you need to have that like hustle factor. But yeah, and it ties into like confidence, right? Of just like keeping going at it.
Tal.
I think that you should really, really be aware of who you listen to. If I were to listen to all the advice, I'd probably still be a lawyer, and how boring would that have been, right? And I got so many people to say that, don't do this, you're up for a partner, you're too young, you're a mother, you've never done this before, really just stay, where you are. And I just had that, sense of confidence that I'm going for this, and I'm taking a leap of faith with the best team possible that I could find. And, if you have it in you, that passion, if you have that idea, just go for it. Don't listen to anybody else.
As we finish up, I just want to say that reminds me of, at Fox Business, and before that I was at CNBC for 9 years. I interviewed the most powerful people, men and women in the world. And Howard Schultz of Starbucks is one of the most forward-thinking business leaders whom I have ever met. And I'm Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and you name it, every Fortune 500 CEO. But I asked him once on the big anniversary of Starbucks, everybody knows about your successes, and somebody came up with an idea about Frappuccino, and 2 years later it's $1 billion business. I need to hear your worst moment. And he said his worst moment was when they had 2 stores, one in Seattle and one in Vancouver. He wasn't taking a salary, and his wife was pregnant with their first child. They were making no money. And his wife's father said, Howard, meet me in the park. So a little, not like the mob, meet me in the park behind the tree. And they sat down on the bench, and the father said, I understand your dream about making the McDonald's chains of high-end coffee. But I think it's time now that you end that and get a real job, because my daughter and your wife are pregnant, and you need to, you need to be realistic. And he said to me, Liz, he wasn't wrong, but I looked at him, and at that point, I almost grew a bubble around me, which is how I began this. Tune out all the negative voices.
Yeah.
You've got to tune them out. And he said, here was my wife's father telling me, get a real job. He wasn't wrong. We had no money, but I wouldn't let go of my dream. To me, you get the best ideas from both men and women. I am thrilled to have these women up here today, and I'm thrilled to have all of you here. I want to thank Tal, Jenny, and Shelley. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you to the organization, Women and Entrepreneurs. This is a great event. Thank you all so much, and it's going to be an amazing day.